A lot of people from a lot of places at a lot of times have played a lot of different video games. I mean, the market is worldwide, spanning hundreds of languages and countries and, Alright, maybe that's just us. But the point is, all kinds of people play video games. And yet, you know what we all at some point have rigorously wanted to do in video games? Move. You can't deny that at some point, you've been playing some game, getting in the groove, and then thought, can I go there? There's just that feeling of wanting to explore, go faster, go farther, or in this direction. Silly you can't go that way, you're stuck here with me. At any rate, I know I have felt that movement, explore-hungry feeling a lot, and I also know that I play roguelikes, and so I know that give me more opportunity in roguelikes, is a thought that I have. Now, don't get me wrong here, plenty of roguelikes have gameplay that have some sort of emphasis on movement. I mean, just try playing The Binding of Isaac without dodging, or Hades with no dash, or, well, just don't even try under the gungeon at that point. But to me, this isn't enough. Those games are great in their own rights, but regardless of the movement mechanics, the fancy text, or the challenging platforming, the true essence of movement and exploration is really only captured in one thing: 3D. Something that is extremely uncommon to find in roguelikes at the moment. But Frosif, I hear you saying, what do you mean? There are so many roguelikes with 3D graphics, such as all of this. No, shut up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, please stay. I'm not talking about that isometric camera so it looks 3D or 2D but with 3D graphics. No, I mean full-out omnidirectional free movement on the Z-axis 3D. You really can't make a substitute for that with graphics or camera angles. Full 3D is practically its own separate genre. Or, well, it is. And for good reason. With the extra challenge of creating a game with an extra dimension comes so many benefits in exploration, creative mechanics, volume, and immersion that true 3D is truly irreplaceable. And I think it's something that the roguelike genre is heavily underutilizing. Name any roguelike out there and there's a good chance that it's a 2D game, whether that's top-down, side-scrolling, isometric camera, etc. That's just kind of the nature of the genre, due in large part to its indie nature. 3D is hard to do, especially for the indie companies or just people that usually make roguelikes. So often, 2D is a kind of must to realistically make a roguelike in a decent time span with limited funding. However, it is possible to make a 3D game as an indie dev. We've seen it a lot more in games in recent years, and those games have been pretty big successes. Valheim, No Man's Sky, Sable, We Happy Few, Minecraft. Yeah, that's not recent, but whatever. And many more full 3D games have gone on to sweep the charts. And while that is obviously partially due to the extremely unique and fun gameplay of each individual game, I think a portion of their combined success is contributed to their incredible use of 3D space, one of the few aspects that links all of them together. Good 3D game creation is a skill that takes years to master and even more time to make a game with, especially for an indie studio. But in the end, when done right, it can make a masterpiece that surpasses the limits of 2D. And by golly, does that not ring more true than for roguelikes, if they would just be 3D. Following tradition, roguelikes for the most part have strayed away from full 3D, due to the immense task that making a 3D game brings with it. Years of learning, needing some considerable funding for a team, the tons of time that must be used, the whole shebang isn't really the most feasible thing for an indie dev to do, the primary force behind roguelikes. But I think that there is a very, very good case as to why 3D might just be one of the best platforms out there for roguelikes to utilize. And while it is difficult, yes, the reward is and has proven in the past to be well worth it. So, why should roguelike devs really go through the immense effort and time of implementing 3D into their games? What's the actual benefit? Well, 3D, aside from just being awesome in general for games, brings with it a value that would work perfectly in conjunction specifically with the roguelike genre: content density. To explain what I mean, let's look at what a roguelike is. Roguelikes as a genre are essentially games that are meant to be replayed over and over and over again in intervals. You play through a run of the game, learning and unlocking more as you progress, eventually die, and then reset all the way back to the beginning of the game and rerun it again, utilizing the things you unlocked and learned previously in order to maybe get farther on this run compared to your last one. This process of die, retry, and die then repeats over and over and over again until you finally reach and defeat the final boss or objective, and then over and over and over again afterwards. That being said, this system of replays of a short game over and over again is destined to get repetitive at a certain point. Considering the smaller size of the games and the often shortest playtime of their individual runs, roguelikes can start to get monotonous after you've reran the game enough, with enough being a time frame as short as several hours. Now, of course, procedural generation, the core piece behind any roguelike that basically means randomizing aspects of each subsequent run, like new item and enemy spawns and map layouts, helps alleviate that repetitiveness by randomizing the limited content of the games on each subsequent run to give more new runs to the player with the same amount of limited content, thus alleviating that feeling of repetitiveness. However, procedural generation has its limits, as it is limited by the amount of content that the game contains that can be randomized. With enough time, the randomization will begin to show repeating trends, you'll notice patterns, and the newness of each run will decline on a steady drop. I talked about this a lot in my previous video if you're interested, but what does that have to do with roguelikes being 3D? Well, 3D brings the ultimate solution to their repetitiveness: denser content. Adding 3D to a game, when done correctly, opens a door to a whole new, dimension of content in the form of exploration, movement mechanics, and immersion. 3D enables players to explore an altered, denser world from the 2D counterparts, one with previously impossible fun movement mechanics, exploration, and maneuvering opportunities. Looking at some of the more well-known 3D titles, a huge part of the fun of them is just exploring the space they exist in, complemented by the unique mechanics they have to traverse it. That is, at least partially, why open-world games are being praised so well and thriving. Their open 3D base provides that essential depth to create the highly praised worlds they have. Sure, these great 3D open-world games have themes and gameplay that exists in the 3D space that is the center point of the game themselves, but that 3D space that they have is the basis of those themes and gameplay. 3D is a sort of canvas for games to paint their gameplay onto, adding an enriching content base for a gorgeous adventure. This is what I think roguelikes should take advantage of to solve the inevitable repetitive feeling that can come from their repetitive nature. Utilizing full open 3D with unique gameplay and mechanics specialized to the roguelike itself can unlock the floodgates for content opportunity that would otherwise be impossible in 2D, not only extending the lifetime of the roguelike, but also allowing devs to creatively implement procedural generation in a 3D space in their own way and style. I mean, look at Risk of Rain 2 for example, a game that amazingly utilizes 3D space with its own unique elements to create a masterpiece that can be played for hours, with creative mechanics, volume, and immersion. That extra layer of 3D in Risk of Rain 2 enables it to contain a lot of content that would be impossible in 2D. The game has tons of fun and unique survivors that utilize movement in their kits, like Loader and Huntress and Mercenary and Loader. There are also all kinds of fun secrets to find in each environment, each one with such a layer of depth that they can be explored for hours via the fun movement mechanics of each survivor, like Loader's Grapple or Voidbean's Teleports. And don't even get me started on the items and enemies. There's tons of items specifically related to movement, and enemies that fly, dash, and zap all around the map, providing an extensive challenge with using the 3D space in-game to dodge, find, and eliminate them. And of course, pretty much everything I just said and more has some sort of procedural generation applied to it on every run. There's a new chosen environment from a random pool on each stage. All the items you encounter are randomly spawned in to create all kinds of random builds to push the limits of traveling the 3D space. The enemies are randomly placed anywhere on each crevice of the map. So beautiful. This massive culmination of randomizable 3D-oriented content means that every single run of Risk of Rain 2 is such a wildly fun and unique one. Each with new enemy layouts to scout out and destroy using the open space provided, items to grab to help traverse the 3D space, and tons of survivors to choose from to tackle the 3D challenge. I have spent days on this game, and I still discover fun movement tricks and explore hidden secrets and push the limits of how fast and far I can travel in one Loader grapple swing. Now, granted, the success of Risk of Rain 1, the predecessor to Risk of Rain 2, which is 2D, proves that a lot of the fun of Risk of Rain 2 comes from the actual uniqueness of Risk of Rain itself, as Risk of Rain 1 is very fun as well. However, I place Risk of Rain 2 a fun tier above its original in large part just because of that amazing 3D space it comes with that works in conjunction with procedural generation and that Risk of Rain charm to create a never-ending tidal wave of fun. And I think that it's very plausible for another talented indie game dev to do the same thing. I mean, there are hardly any full 3D roguelikes out there as of recording. Risk of Rain 2, Gunfire Reborn, Muck, and Returnal are the only 4 that I know of myself. And while there may be a bit more out there that I'm forgetting, I would dare say that there's not very many, if any more at all, than that. So the creative opportunity to work with 3D in a roguelike is almost limitless right now, and the competition is very minimal. Along with that, having a 3D game makes so many opportunities for dense, unique content, which in the world of roguelikes is an incredibly valuable tool to extend the longevity and just general funness overall of the games. Yeah, it's hard, but by golly, I think it would have potential. And I also will definitely, if I have the time, boo college, take a look at and probably make a video about any 3D roguelikes I find. So like 3 people will be guaranteed to see it. Looking back at everything, maybe I am overhyping the real value of 3D for roguelikes. But then again, my gosh, wouldn't it just be so cool if we had like a big giant open world structure kind of thing in a roguelike? I mean, obviously there's bumps to work around, like making it loop and making sure each individual run isn't massively long. But one, Returnal, while it isn't like the most on-the-line roguelike, is pretty big and it worked out alright. And 2, even if it was just attempted, like just people tried to do it even if it wasn't perfect, that would be so awesome to see just because of the rarity of full 3D roguelikes. I mean, again, I only know of 4, Risk of Rain 2, Gunfire Reborn, Muck, and Returnal, and they were all really great games in my opinion. And I feel like other games could potentially build on those games' successes and refine the use of 3D in roguelikes, potentially taking it a step farther than previously seen before. Now, is that a bit too much to ask of indie devs? Maybe, but I've seen the dedication and commitment indie devs put into their titles, and they certainly haven't strayed away from 3D in other genres, so I know that it's possible, it's just a matter of whether or not it happens. And I just really hope it happens. But what do you think about 3D in roguelikes? Is it really underutilized? Should it be done more, or at all? Please let me know in the comments. And you know what? I'm so excited for 3D now that I'm going to be 3D myself. Close enough.